Keitz Lachoshech. This is a new Maamer in our series of Maamorim, of Shiurim, on Maamorim of the Rebbe. And we're doing this almost for 2 years now with Hashem's help. And we focused on the edited Maamorim, the Mugadik Maamorim, with a couple of exceptions. And we've also chosen to learn the Maamorim of the first 20 years of the Rebbe's Nesiyas as opposed to the second 20 years for a technical reason. There are technical reasons why, at least in the short term, we're doing Maamorim of the earlier years that are Muga. This is one of the most difficult Maamorim. It really is an incredibly difficult Maamer. Very involved, very deep, very edel. And it's going to take us a while to get through. We're not going to be able to do this in an hour, or even 2, or probably not 3. So today we're going to do introduction, basically. And the first thing I want to say by introduction is look at the date of the Maamer Shabbos Pashas Dvarim Tisha B'Av Nidcha Hei Tafshin Chav Daled. This Maamer was said on a Shabbos, which was itself Tisha B'Av, in 1964, Tafshin Chav Daled. And it's based on a Maamer that the Rebbe Rashab said. I think his Maamer begins Tzion B'Mishpatei Pod. I don't think his Maamer begins Keitz Lachoshech. It was also Shabbos, and it was also Tisha B'Av, and obviously it was also a Nidcha. So 50 years to the day after the Rebbe Rashab said this Maamer on Tisha B'Av, the Rebbe repeated the Maamer on Tisha B'Av as well. Which of course leads us to the immediate question of learning Torah on Shabbos and I'm learning Torah on Tisha B'Av. So first of all, I'm not a Rav, and this is not a class in Halacha, and I'm not qualified to address questions in Halacha. When Shabbos is Tisha B'Av, the idea of not learning Mitzad Avelis is a bit different from what I understand than when it's not Shabbos. But the Rebbeim verbringt, and the Rebbeim said Chassidus. And the Rebbe spoke about this on more than one occasion. And part of the explanation, of course, is that Tisha B'Av, you're not allowed to learn Torah because it's a time of Avelis. And Pekudi Hashem Yisharim Mesamche Leiv Torah brings a person to a state of Simcha, and therefore on the day of Avelis, you're not allowed to learn Torah, which is going to increase in one's Simcha. But Chassidus we do learn on Tisha B'Av. The source of this, of course, is in the Sefer HaMinhagim, in the name of Reb Hillel Parashat. Reb Hillel Parashat said that Chassidus you're allowed to learn on Tisha B'Av, even though it's a time of Avelis. But you're not concerned that the Limud Chassidus will bring a person to Simcha, which is the opposite of Avelis, because the Gemara says, the Chazal say, Ein Meisim Razei Teira Lemisha Libe Deig B'Kirbe, that secrets of Torah are not revealed to anybody that's not Libe Deig, whose heart is pounding in his chest, who's burdened by the fear of sin or by sins committed and being corrected and so on. And since Ein Magalan Rozei Teila Lemisha Libe Deig B'Kirbe, or of course Bedakas, Usviv of Nishara Ma'ed, Kadosh Baruch Hu Daik B'Tzadik Mikot HaShayra, a person who learns Seidus HaTorah is obviously on a higher level. And therefore he concerns himself with iniquities, with chesreinis that he possesses that another person wouldn't even notice. And as a consequence, Ein Meisim Rozei Teira Alibe Lemisha Libe Deig B'Kirbe, people who learn Pnimiyas HaTorah are not going to have simcha from learning Pnimiyas HaTorah. This is what the Hillel Parasha said. So I saw in a sefer of a Pesach, of an Achrin, who brings the Hillel and he argues. And he says that today people learn Chassidus who are much lower levels. People learn Chassidus today who are not in the Madrega of Libe Deig B'Kirbe, and therefore he argues that you're not allowed to learn Chassidus on Tisha B'Av. But the Minig Chabad, the Minig Chassidim, like it's brought, like I said in Sefer HaMinhagim, that Chassidus we do learn. The Rebbe writes you should learn those in Yonim and Chassidus that are connected to Eicha, like the Rishimus of Tzemach Tzedek on Eicha, and also Sefer Iyev, and so on. But the minig is that you learn Chassidus on Tisha B'Av. And it bothered me that Reb Hillel Parasha says, and the Rebbe brings it in Sefer HaMinhagim, in what appears to be a Eirah Rebbe, that Tisha B'Av you're allowed to learn Chassidus, because Ein Mason Razei Teira Lemishat Libi Deg B'Kirbe, and along comes a Yid, a Rav, a Pesach, and he says that today people learn Chassidus Wa'at Libam De'agim B'Kirbam, and therefore you're not allowed to learn Chassidus Tisha B'Av. Then I came across a note, a word from the Rebbe, which enlightened this question incredibly. And that is, it is a sefer called HaMelech B'Mesibei. HaMelech B'Mesibei is a collection of talks, of siches of the Rebbe said by the Seudes upstairs. As long as the Alter Rebbetzin was alive, the Rebbe ate all the meals of Yom Tov. That means Matzah Yom Kippur, maybe Erev Yom Kippur also, Matzah Yom Kippur, and then Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkos, in the same seat that he sat in, B'chaim Chiyasi B'al Madein of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And during those meals, the Rebbe sat, Ka'avda Kamei Mora, as it's known. He sat by the table as if the Frierdiker was actually physically present. But he did things a little bit differently. And one of the things that he did a little bit differently was that if he was asked a question, he would respond. On rare occasion, he would initiate an idea, but Beklal, the Rebbe responded to questions that people asked him. Otherwise, he sat there with the greatest bittul. So there was a conversation once about this question of what does it mean that Chassidim learn Chassidus, Primis HaTeira on Tisha B'Av, because Ein Mason Razei Teira Elo Lemisha Liba Deig B'Kirben, it's not going to bring to the Pekudia Vayi Yisharim Esamchei Leif. And the Rebbe gave an incredible answer. And the answer that he gave is that it's not a question of the madrega of the person learning. It's a question of the madrega of the person's understanding what he learns. And the Rebbe explained that one of the differences between Limud HaNigla and Limud HaPnimis HaTeira of Chassidus is that Limud HaNigla you can understand completely. You can understand that what's called Hasagas HaMahus. Since you're dealing with physical things or svaras relating to physical things, so when you study an idea of Nigla Teira, you can understand it completely and it'll give you great joy. The nature of Limud HaChassidus is that there's only Yediyas HaMetzias and there's no Hasagas HaMahus. You understand that you're talking about an Inyan Ruchni, or you understand that there's an Inyan Ruchni that you're discussing, but you know only its Metzias. Metzias basically means that it exists. It's Mahus you don't know. It's substance you cannot know, because Ruchnias and Elokus are beyond our reality, and because they're beyond our reality, we are our understanding. So we talk about it, but we never get to know what it is. So the Rebbe said, Amor in the Kavart. The Rebbe said that a Mason Razei Teira Lemisha Libi Deig B'Kirbe means that the Razei Teira creates the Libi Deig B'Kirbe. Anytime a person learns Primis HaTeira, he's never sure he understands it correctly, and that creates the Libi Deig. So according to this interpretation of the Rebbe, it really doesn't matter who's learning Chassidus. The nature of Limud HaChassidus is that it creates Libi Deig, which answers the shaila, the kasha that this Pesach raised against what Reb Hillel Padisher said, which the Rebbe quotes in the Sefer HaMenhagim. And it explains why, in fact, Chassidim learn Chassidus on Tisha B'Av, because the nature of Limud HaChassidus, if you try to understand it, in truth, leaves you dayeg, because as much as you understand, you don't understand it completely. And to be very frank, there are few Maimorei Chassidus that are going to dazzle you, that are going to dizzy you, that are going to leave you, and when I say you, I mean me and all of us, less certain that we understood it correctly than this particular Maamer, because the material, the subject matter, is extraordinarily difficult, really extraordinarily deep, extraordinarily difficult. The Maamer is about 3 madregas of Ein Sof, and the differences between one madrega and the second madrega and the third madrega, and how it all ultimately ties into the pasuk Keitz Lachoshech. So, if it's true that when a person learns Chassidus, the Chassidus itself creates the Libe Deig, and therefore one is allowed to learn it in Tisha B'Av, this Maamer is a Daige Shebe Daige, so you could certainly learn it in Tisha B'Av, even though it's a very, very deep and a rich Haskalah, but it's so edel, it's so exalted, that you learn this Maamer and you walk away dizzy. You really walk away dizzy. Now, this is my first introduction, just to set up the context, the history of the Maamer. And I want you to understand that the Rebbe in the Maamer is going to address the fact, first of all in Perek Gimel, and then again later on at the end of the Maamer, in Perek Ches, the fact that this Maamer was said on Tisha B'Av itself, how it ties into the idea of 3 madregas and Eir, and Afichas Cheshach Le'er, and different madregas of Afichas Cheshach Le'er, and so on and so forth. So it's going to become significant not only in the historic context of when the Maamer was said is actually going to be analyzed as to what's the relationship between the time the Maamer was said and what the Maamer's content is about. Now we move on to our second introduction. This is a Maamer from the Rebbe Rashab and Ayin Beis. Tov Reish Ayin Beis. I think it starts from Perek Reish Ayin Tes and it goes till Perek Reish Pei Beis. That's 4 parakim. Reish Ayin Tes, Reish Pei, Reish Be'al, Reish Pei Beis. And again, I believe it's Siyim B'Mishpati Pada. I looked through the Maamer, but I'm almost certain that it's Siyim B'Mishpati Pada. Now you must understand that the Rebbe is supposedly reviewing a Maamer of the Rebbe Rashab, but the Rebbe's version is quite different than the Rebbe Rashab's, and you could even argue that it's not only different, it's actually diametrically opposite the intention of the Rebbe Rashab. And what I intend to do is explain to you the context of the way the Rebbe Rashab is saying the Maamer, and now the context of the Rebbe's repeating of this Maamer of the Rebbe Rashab, considering that it's a different context, you have a different focus in the Maamer. And that is, like I said, this is part of Hemshech Tov Reish Ayin Beis, Terav. Hemshech Terav is huge. It's incredibly large. In the old print, which of course is now being reprinted with footnotes and so on, was 1,447 pages. 1,477 pages. Aleph Tov Ayin Zayin, 1,477 pages long, and it's very far from finished. It's huge. It's gargantuan. It's incredibly large. And if you know the language of the Maamorim of the Rebbe Rashab, in spite of its size, the style of writing is actually much more concise than the Maamorim before it. Meaning to say, if this was written in the style of the Samach Vav, it would probably be 2,000 pages long, because the Ayin Beis, the Rebbe Rashab, is incredibly clear, but incredibly concise in how he presents ideas. It's almost like the Maamorim of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Those who've studied the Haskalah Maamorim of the Frierdiker Rebbe see how precise and concise and edel the style is. The Maamorim of the Rebbe Rashab, beginning with Hemshech Ayin Beis until the end of his Nesius, have that kind of crispness and that kind of conciseness. So Ayin Beis is an extraordinary piece of work, extraordinary work. And as the Seder of a Hemshech, you go me'inyan le'inyan, you go from topic to topic. One of the issues which is discussed in Hemshech Ayin Beis at incredibly great length is the question of Teiu and Tikkun. It's a very long arichas, maybe it's 200 pages, a very long arichas of Adin of Teiu and Tikkun. And of course, considering how large the conversation on Teiu and Tikkun is, naturally he goes from subject to subject, from topic to topic within Teiu and Tikkun, explaining the differences between Teiu and Tikkun, whether Ikir is Erd, Ikir is Kalim, where the Bittel is, all kinds of inyanim. When he finishes the discussion of Teiu and Tikkun, he proceeds with a discussion on Eires and Kalim. And the point that he's trying to make, and this point also goes on for quite a few parakim, is that in order for Tikkun to be Tikkun, there has to be a good mezeg, there has to be a good blend, a good mix between Eir and Keli. The Eir can't be too strong, the Keli can't be too dense, the Keli can't be too small, it can't be too large, and so on and so forth, for there to be a mezeg nocha and a proper mixing of Eiris and Kalim. And if the Eiris and Kalim are not properly blended, if the Eir is too strong and the Keli is too weak, or the Eir is too strong and the Keli is too strong, or whatever the mezeg is, if it's a mezeg built in nochen, it creates a disorder, chaos. In order for Tikkun to be Tikkun, Eiris and Kalim have to be in the proper blend, in the proper mix. And there are many aspects to what is necessary, what is required for Eir and Kel to have a mazig and a proper blend. The basic idea is that each one has to go against its teva. Oir has to go against its teva, and Keli has to go against its teva. Oir has to go against its teva because the teva ha'oir is to be aliyah and ayin. The nature of light is to ascend and be one with its source. And it's going against its teva means to come down and shine in Kelim. Keli has to go against its teva because the teva of Keli is like Ruach HaBehema Hi HaYiredes Lamata. The teva of Keli is that it's going down, and Keli has to go against its teva to raise itself up to meet the Oir. In order to have the Mezig and Achayin and Elam HaTikkun, the Oir has to go against its nature, and the Keli has to go against its nature. And in order for the Oir to go against its nature, and the Keli to go against its nature, you have to have bittel, to the purpose, to the kavanah, that Oir is serving its purpose. And since the Eibishter wants it to be Gilui, it's a Gilui, notwithstanding that by nature it wants to be in a state of Aliyah, And Keli is also in a state of bittul, serving the purpose for which the Eibishter created it, and therefore it's going against its teva and having a teva of an aliyah, as opposed to a yerida lamata. And there's many, many more pratim, but that's the basic idea. So when the Rebbe Rashab, so to speak, transfers from the discussion of Teiu and Tikkun to Eidus and Keli, which is really a continuation of that conversation on Teiu and Tikkun, he presents Eid and Keli. That's what he does. And the Maamer, Tziyim B'Mishpat Poda Aderes, 1914, which is the source of Keitz Lachoshech Tafshech Avdal, which is 50 years later to the day. The Maamer Tziyim B'Mishpat Poda talks about Oir. The whole Maamer is about Oir. The subsequent Maamer, and perhaps Maamer before also, but not that Maamer, talk about Kelim, and ultimately they get into the question of how Eid and Keli meet in a Mezig and a Chena and achieve the purpose for which the Eibishter created them. So this Maamer deals entirely with Eid. So when you learn the Maamer of the Rebbe Rashab, there's a couple of things you have to bear in mind. You're not learning a Maamer in isolation. This Maamer is not standalone, although to some extent it is standalone. I believe the Rebbe once made that comment. But ultimately it's part of a hemshech, it's part of a series. Moreover, the context of the hemshech is focusing on oir, is focusing on light from a particular perspective, from a particular angle. And the perspective of the Maamer of the Rebbe Rashab in Hemshech Hayim Beis, in discussing oir, is he's contrasting it with Kelim. When you're comparing oir to Keli, so the teva of Eid is to go up, aliyah and histalkus and ayin. The teva of Kelim is yerida and nefila, yom shacha lamata and yesh. So the Maamer's focus is on Oir as it is in its state of aliyah, in its state of bittul, its state of ascent, because it's being contrasted, it's being compared and contrasted to Kelim, which are the opposite of that. That's how the Rebbe Rashab's Maamer goes. And the discussion on Eid assumes that context. The discussion on Eid comes from that framework. So when you learn this Maamer, and the Rebbe Rashab is going to discuss 3 madregas of Eid, and it's possible that at least the middle madrega has more than one madrega within the madrega, but let's not go where we mustn't. The end of the day is, when you learn the Maamer of the Rebbe Rashab, you come away with the following conclusion. The inyan of Eid is ayin. The idea of Eid is to be a non-metzias. The idea of Eid is not to manifest and to reveal itself and to shine, but to be nichel in the moed. And of course the opposite of that is going to be Keli, and that when Eid meets Keli, each one has to, so to speak, break its teva and serve its purpose, so that Eid should be an amshacha and a gili, and Keli should be an aliyah. Right. Our Rebbe is learning this Maamer out of context. There is, as far as I know, no reference to how this Maamer is a part of a hemshech. To the contrary, the Rebbe wants to isolate this Maamer, and he wants to Tisha B'Av eyes it. Instead of seeing this Maamer in the light of the entire hemshech, the Rebbe wants to study the Maamer, but identify it in conjunction with a particular time and place. Or to say this in different words, and this is a bit of a stretch, but only a bit of a stretch. One of the things that the Rebbe does in his Maimorim is that he studies the Maimorim of the previous Rabbeim and focuses on those aspects of the previous Rabbeim that the previous Rabbeim paid little attention to, like the beginnings and the ends, like the circumstances in which the Maimorim were said, and so on. So here is a Maamer, which is based on a Maamer of the Rebbe Rashab, but the Rebbe is emphatically taking it out of context, learning it as a Maamer, as a standalone, and focusing on the relationship between this Maamer and Tisha B'Av, and the idea that Tisha B'Av represents the ultimate Choshech, the ultimate darkness, and that the idea of Mashiach is Keitz Lachoshech, that the darkness is overturned in a way of Keitz, in an ultimate way, in an absolute way, in a way that never is reversible, and so on. This is how the Rebbe learns the Maamer of the Rebbe Rashab. In addition, there is the fact that the Rebbe is the Rebbe. Everybody understands, as the Rebbe said, I believe the Rebbe said this on more than one occasion that if a betut neshuf kenayis, if he doesn't say new things that others didn't say, so what's he needed for? Every Rebbe, the union of a Rebbe is chiddush. And of course, our Rebbe's focus and chiddush to the point of obsession is Nisava HaKadosh Baruch Hu Liyas Leyes Baruch Dira B'Tachteinu. It's all about the lower worlds, about bringing the Eibush down into the lower worlds, and the purpose of creation, which is why the Rebbe focuses so much on Lei HaMedrash Iker Ela HaMaiseh. HaMaiseh Hu HaIker, the action is the main thing, and so forth, and so on, and so on, and so forth. Accordingly, the Rebbe learns the same Maamer that the Rebbe Rashab learns, but if you pay very, very careful attention, he's actually taking us in the opposite direction of the Rebbe Rashab. And I'll put it to you in these words. In the case of the Rebbe Rashab, he's contrasting Oyer from Keli. By contrasting Oyer from Keli, Keli becomes the Dira B'Tachtoinim, Keli becomes the Amshach and the Gilui, and Oyer becomes the Ayin. The Rebbe, because he's not learning the Maamer in the context of the Maamorim before and the Maamorim after, he's learning it as a Maamer by itself. Consequently, when he studies the idea of Oyer, since he's not contrasting Oyer to Keli, he finds himself contrasting Oyer to another Oyer. The Rebbe Rashab speaks about 3 levels of Oyer. Our Rebbe speaks about 3 levels of Oyer, the same 3 levels of Oyer, and you're going to see this in Mitzvah Hashem in the next class and the class after that, and so on. I'm not entirely sure how many classes this Maamer will take, but I suspect it will be at least 4, and we're going to have plenty of time to analyze the different levels of Oyer. But the conclusion of the Rebbe is that since he, in contrast to the Rebbe Rashab, isn't comparing and contrasting Oyer to Kli, but he's speaking about Oyer alone. And then, of course, you have to add the fact that Beklal, the whole inyan of our Rebbe, of this Rebbe, of Der Ashvi, of the Rebbe's Lagazon, is to speak about everything in terms of bringing godliness down. He finds himself contrasting one Oyer with another Oyer. And if you go through the Maamer and you pay careful attention, you come away with the following recognition and the following realization. The Rebbe Rashab speaks about 3 madregas of Ein Sof. There's the highest level, and there's the middle level, and there's the lowest level. What's the difference between the lowest level, the middle level, and the highest level? So we'll see it, like I said, in the next classes, but in a sentence or two. The lowest level is revealed, and its bittul is dveikus. The middle level is bottle, because he feels its source. And the highest level is one with the source, because its desire is to be one with its source. 3 levels. So you would think that the highest level is higher than the middle level, and the middle level is higher than the lowest level. So the Rebbe is going to spit it on its head, and he's going to say that the best level, the most meaningful level, is the level of Gila, level of revelation. Again, since the Rebbe is not comparing and contrasting Oyer with Keli as the Rebbe Rashab is, but is comparing and contrasting one Oyer with another Oyer. And in addition to that, Beklal, the Rebbe's approach to everything is to find the Tachtein, and to find the Giloy, and to find the Amshacha. The Rebbe is going to compare and contrast the 3 madregas of Ein Sof and celebrate the lowest level of Ein Sof, where the bittul is the least. And in today's class, which is an introductory class, we're going to learn 2 pieces of a Maamer, one of which we'll probably relearn in a later class, and the other one will probably suffice what we're going to learn tonight, that demonstrate what the Rebbe is doing. Now, so appreciate what's happening here. There's 2 points that you need to get. Point number 1 is the Rebbe is basing a Maamer on the Rebbe Rashab, but he isn't repeating what the Rebbe Rashab is saying. He's actually, in a very subtle way, in a very nuanced way, if you're attentive, saying the opposite of what the Rebbe Rashab is saying. And again, number 2, it's because of the Rebbe's whole approach to the world, the Betachtenim, and so on. So let's not waste any time. Let's go to the 2 little shtikelach, which I intend on learning today. They're pieces of the Maamer. And in both of these pieces, I believe you see revealed the fact that the Rebbe is, in effect, spinning the Maamer differently than the Rebbe Rashab. The first shtikelach is in Perek Dalet, the second paragraph in Perek Dalet, which begins v'yesh leima, which in the print that you have is on page Shin Lamed Beis. So we're going to read a few lines inside. We're going to translate these few lines. And again, what I want you to see is how the Rebbe Rashab, and our Rebbe, is learning the Maamer of the Rebbe Rashab, but drawing what amounts to opposite conclusions. Because in the Rebbe Rashab's Maamer, the whole point is to show how Oid is Ayin and Bilti Metzias, even the lowest Madrege. And the Rebbe is going to say something which is almost the opposite of that. V'yesh leiman. The Zeh shahabitul the Eir shemitzad atzmei. There are different levels of bittul. As the Rebbe Rashab explains in his Maamer, which the Rebbe repeated in the Prakim Gimel and Daled, which obviously we skipped, and we're going to get back to Amir Hashem in subsequent classes. Says the Rebbe, the level of Oir, whose bittul is mitadat, the bittul of Eir as it is by itself, is be'er mislabish b'kelim, is the lowest level of Eir, is the level of Eir which is revealed in kelim. The bittul of Oir, without any outside influence, is the lowest madrega of Eir, which is the madrega of Eir which is revealed, and the madrega of Eir which goes into Keli. Now, this lowest level of bittul is the lowest, because there's the least experience, the least sense of the source. That's why it's revealed. On the other hand, v'habittul da'ir, when you say that there are higher bittuls, which is shemitzad hergish mekere, that it's feeling its source, umitzad haratzah likol b'mekere, because it wants to be in the place of the source, and these two things, hergish mekere and ratzah likol b'mekere, are the second level and the third level of Eir. And in both cases, because of the hergish mekere, and especially because of the hergish of ratzah likol b'mekere, it is the opposite of Eir mislabish b'kelim. Says the Rebbe, hu b'ha'er shalamayla mi'eslapshis, is light which is hid and revealed in vessels. So obviously, the simple reason for this is because light which goes into a vessel is lower than a light which can't go into a vessel. Everybody understands that? Right? In other words, when you discuss Oir in a Kabbalistic framework, of course the way it's explained in Chassidus, the highest madregas of Eir are Helem, the lower madregas of Eir are Gilui, the higher madregas of Eir are Gilui Kloli, the lower madregas of Eir are Gilui Prati, and so on and so forth. So Eir which goes into Kli is lower than Eir which doesn't go into Kli. But the Rebbe spins it the other way and says exactly the opposite. He's like this. Who? I'm on the third line of this paragraph. Ki inyan ha'eir hu Gilui. Stop. These four words need to be italicized and undersized and underscored and emphasized. And the idea of Eir is Gil. The purpose for light is revelation. Period. V'kivan she'ikir ha'gili shabe'er. Whereas the place where Eir fulfills its purpose, which is to be revealed, is al yedei hislapshusei bekelim, is when it only goes into the vessels. Lachein, therefore, ha'oir k'meish hu mitadatzmai, Oir, when left to its own devices, without anything outside of Eir affecting it. Eir, in as much as Eir is yered v'nimsach le'islabish bekelim, is drawn, it descends and is drawn down to go into vessels. It may be true that the idea of vessels is the opposite of light. As the Rebbe said, and as I told you in my introduction, this is really going to be the arichis in Ayin Beis. That the idea of Eir is Ayin, the idea of Kelim is Yesh. Skip the parentheses. Nevertheless, since the idea of Eir, which is Ayin, inasmuch as it is by itself bottle, Shemitzad atzmehu, then in and of himself, it's zeh she'en yonehu gili amoid, is to reveal the source. Lachein mitzad zeh gufa, accordingly, since the idea of Eir by itself is to reveal the source, hu yeded v'nimshlech le'islabish b'kelim, it descends and is drawn to go into vessels, and he adds 5 more words, b'chadei sha'gili shalei yeh b'shleimus, that the revelation should be complete. Aval k'shenirgesh b'ha'ek Eir ha'makar shalei, when the light is interfered with, because the source is felt in the light, shemovdal mimenu, ayedezehu mizbatal minyan giloy, it interferes with the concept of giloy, and Oir is not able to fulfill its purpose. In other words, Oir is not able to fulfill its shlichus. What does it say in these 8 lines? Now, I'm telling you what I think it says in these 8 lines. I don't know what it says in these 8 lines. But I'm I'm pretty certain that what I'm going to share with you is the correct pshat in these 8 lines. You see, what is bittul? What is bittul? Obviously, bittul is the opposite of yesh. Opposite of bittul is yesh. Or the opposite of yesh is bittul. What does yesh mean? I feel myself. What does yesh mean? I'm busy with myself. What does yesh mean? I'm concerned with myself. At the expense of the one who made me and why he made me and so on. So if yesh is me being concerned with myself and forgetting about the Eibishter, bittul is me remembering the Eibishter and doing what the Eibishter wants. So when you speak about bittul, when you say the word bittul, the Rebbe wants you to know that bittul has 2 bases. And I'm going to use these words just to be provocative. What I'm about to say is just to get under people's skin. There is bittul as it's known in Tohu, and there's bittul as it's known in Tikkun. Elam HaTohu is also bottle. It's so bottle that it breaks. Elam HaTikkun is less bottle, but Elam HaTikkun doesn't break. Because there's a very, very big difference between the bittul of Tohu and the bittul of Tikkun. I'll tell you what the difference is. If a person is drawn to the Eibishter because the Eibishter is great, and his attraction to the Eibishter is because he understands him, and because he feels him, and because he senses him, and maybe even because he experiences him. And because all of these reasons he's drawn to Lakus, which is a form of bittul. What is really going on? What's really going on is this becomes that person's self-interest. Just the Rabbi Hillel Paritcher used to say that if Bailei Taiva knew the Taiva that there was in Chassidus, weil sie abgelost alle Taivas und sich abgegeben nur mit Limud Chassidus. Rabbi Hillel, who was a tzaddik and a Kodesh Merechem U'Meleida, as one of the Alter Rebbe's Chassidim, Pesach Malstovka said that if people who were pleasure seekers knew the pleasure in Chassidus, they would abandon all other pleasures and pursue Chassidus. You can get involved with the Eibishter and be infatuated with the Eibishter and in love with the Eibishter and sacrifice yourself for the Eibishter, and the root of it is yourself. The Eibishter is an interest like any other interest. That's the bittul of Elam HaTohu. Elam HaTohu is bottled to the Eibishter because Elam HaTohu appreciates incredibly well how great the Eibishter is. So that's a bittul whose core, whose essence is Yeshus. It's like a student sits and listens to a teacher and subjugates himself and submits himself and puts himself under the heel or the influence of his teacher completely. Why is he doing it? Because of what the teacher is giving him. He sees the greatness of the teacher and he wants to have this relationship, so he's involved with the teacher as the Maamer Chazal, Zon of Larois, being the tail of a lion is better than being the head of the fox. So that concept of bittul is really in a way self-serving, which is why there's a shvita, which is why Tohu happens, or doesn't sustain itself. But then there's another bittul. What's the other bittul? Mo Hashem Elekecha Sheil Me'imach Kiyim L'Yira. What does God want from me? And of course, in that sentence, Mo Hashem Elekecha Sheil Me'imach Kiyim L'Yira, the most important word is the word Mo. Mo means do what He wants, not what you want. And there's a bittul in that also. There's a bittul in that too. There is a bittul means I'm infatuated with God because God is great. And bittul, I'm infatuated with God, then I want to serve God. What's it? And this is called the bittul of tikkun. Mo. What's the difference between this bittul and this bittul? The difference between this bittul and this bittul is a simple one. When you're infatuated with God because God has an appeal to you, you don't want God to dictate the terms of your bittul. You don't want the Eibishter to tell you, Lech lecha, me'artzecha, me'meladetecha, me'beisavicha, la'or zasharareka. You don't want the Eibishter to tell you to pick yourself up from where you are and move someplace else, because you're not interested in doing what the Eibishter wants. You're interested in having a relationship with the Eibishter for yourself. On the other hand, if you have a bittul of tikkun, a bittul of ma, so the bittul means, Mo Hashem Elokecha Hashem imach kiyim liyira. What does Hashem want from me? And that's what I want. So now, how does this play out in Eid Ein Sof? How does it play out in Eid Ein Sof? When you say there's 3 levels of Eid Ein Sof, there's the highest level of Eid Ein Sof, which is so bottled to Hashem, it's called Ratzei L'Kol B'Mkeri. It's Moir Shabayr. And there's a second madrega of Eir, which is not as bottle, but it's a bittel of kulak meklach, which is called hergish mekere. Then the lowest level of Eir Ein Sof, which is gilui, but its gilui is rooted in a dveikus, so it's expressing the Eibush as revealing the Eibushter. But if you remember in the Maamer that we learned this winter about Das Elyon and Das Tachten, I explained to you the meaning of the word dveikus is that you represent your source to such an extent that you have no self-identity other than your source. So dveikus means I'm not bottled to the Eibush to the point that I want Hashem and I don't exist. I'm not bottled to the Eibush even to the extent that I feel Him and as a result I'm quieted. My bittul to the Eibush is that I'm revealing Him. So when you look at these three levels of Oyer, from the perspective of their mitzias versus their bildi mitzias, in other words, in the language of Maamer of the Rebbe Rashab, the highest madrega of Oyer is the greatest madrega of bittul, and the lowest madrega of Oyer is the lowest madrega of bittul. Comes again the Rebbe Da, our Rebbe, studies the Maamer of the Rebbe Rashab, but spins it a different way, and he says that why did Hashem create Oyer? That's the question. Not what is Oyer, but what does God want from Oyer? In other words, where is there the maximum bittul of Oyer? And the answer to the question, where is there the maximum bittul of Oyer, is not which Oyer is closest to the Eibishter, but which Oyer is closest to the Eibishter's purpose. And now all of a sudden it's spun 180 degrees. The greatest level of Oyer is the Oyer that shines into a keli. Why? That's what the Eibishter wants. If Oyer is unable to shine into a keli, because there's something higher than the Oyer, which is mevatel the Oyer, and it's causing the Oyer to be in a state of helim, or to be in a state of etzem. In terms of the Oyer itself, it's closer to the Eibishter. But in terms of fulfilling the purpose of the Eibishter, it's not fulfilling the purpose. The Eibishter's purpose is that Oyer should be a state of gila. This is a gewaldige chiddush. When you talk about Eir Ein Sof, and of course whenever we talk about Eir Ein Sof, we always talk about it has no mitzias. Eir Ein Sof is another word for elikus, for godliness. The reality of Eir Ein Sof represents the Eibishter. The reality of Eir Ein Sof is that it has no mitzias whatsoever, has no yeshus whatsoever, has no self-identity. Like I told you, the I of Eir is Moir. Eir has no I. The whole mitzias of Eir is that's Magala Moir. And there's different levels of Eir Ein Sof, and all levels of Eir Ein Sof are this bottle. But there becomes a very simple question: why did the Eibishter create Eir Ein Sof? Says the Rebbe, the Eibishter created Eir Ein Sof for the sake of Gilui. Now, in terms of Hishtalshalos, the Madrega of Eir Ein Sof, which is Gili, is the lowest Madrega. The Madrega of Eir Ein Sof, which is Helim, and the Madrega of Eir Ein Sof, which is Etzem, is higher than Gilui. But that's what Eir is by itself. In terms of fulfilling the Ratzon Ha'elyon, Eir, which is Gilui, is serving the Eibishter's purpose. So the Rebbe here, in this few lines, says that the lowest Madrega of Eir is the most bottle. You know why the lowest Madrega of Eir is the most bottle? It's because that's why the Eibishter created Eir. Hashem didn't create Eir to be bottle. Hashem created Eir to represent Him, to be Gilui. Now, of course, when Eir is Gilui, it's a total bittul, because its whole Matthias is dveikus, but it's fulfilling its purpose. And this is the first indicator that the Rebbe is taking the Maamer of the Rebbe Rashab and going in quite a different direction. Look again, 3 lines of that paragraph. Inyan ha'eru gili, the inyan of Eir is to be revealed. V'kivan she'ikar ha'gili shebe'er, the place where light is revealed most is adei tlapshusa v'kelim, by going into a vessel. L'chein ha'eir kumeshu mitadatzma, Eir as the Eibishter made him, yedid v'nimshech l'slaber kelim. When Eir is gilui, and you would say Eir is gilui because it's outside of the moed, Eir is gil because it's not going to hergesh ha'moed, and all these other fancy things. It's deficiency in Eir, says the Rebbe, you're making a mistake. You know why Eir is Gili? It's because that's what the Eibishter created Eir for. The Eibishter created Eir for the purposes of being Gili. So the lowest Madrega of Eir is the highest level of Eir. Not in terms of what it is, but in terms of fulfilling its purposes. Bittul Ta'akadosh Baruch. This is the first piece of Maamer that I wanted to read. And I've been quite repetitive. And I hope my point has come across clearly. And to repeat in a sentence again, the Madrega of Eir, which is Gilui, is the lowest Madrega in terms of Hishtalshalos, but it's the most bottle in terms of fulfilling the purpose for which the Eibishter created it, because the Eibishter created the Eir should be Gilui. And you'll see in Mitzvah Hashem at the end of the Maamer where this plays out, Liyosad Lavi. Now I want you to go to the second shtikele, which we're going to be doing tonight, which is Perek Zayin, the bottom of page Shin Lamed Daled. And this, we're going to learn in its entirety. I'm going to try to do something which is quite difficult for me to do, which is to first learn it from the beginning to the end, and then try my best to explain it. As I've already indicated, that you'll see in the next classes at length, in this Maamer we're going to have three madregas of Ein Sof. The lowest madrega of Ein Sof is Gilui, the second madrega of Ein Sof is Kolul in Atzmus, and the third madrega of Ein Sof is how Eid itself is one with Atzmus. It's called Dveikus. Gilui of Ein Sof is Dveikus. It's Hergish B'Kairi is the second level, and Haratzon Likolul B'Kairi becomes the highest madrega. So now, let's go back to the world of Ayin Beis again. There's a whole Maamer the Rebbe Rashab, Tziyin b'mishpat tipoda aderes tafresh ayin daled, which explains three madregas of Ein Sof. Now you already know that in Hemshech Ayin Beis the contrast is between Oyer and Keli. Okay. So since in Hemshech Ayin Beis the contrast between Oyer and Keli, the Rebbe Rashab lumps all three Oyers together and says all Oyer share the property of Ayin, even the lowest level of Oyer, which is in Gilui, is Ayin, is bottle, it's Aliyah, it's Histalkus, those are B'nim Shech Lamata, and so on and so forth. Keli is the opposite of all of those things. Now our Maamer, which is the Maamer of our Rebbe, we're not contrasting Eir to Keli, we're contrasting an Eir against an Eir. And we're not learning it as part of a Hemshech, we're learning it as a standalone Maamer, and we're learning it in Deira Shvi, where everything in Deira Shvi is about Tachteinim and Yerida and so on and so forth. So the Rebbe now is learning the very end of the Maamer, Tzim b'mishpat tipoda aderes of the Rebbe Rashab. And again, what does it say at the end of the Rebbe Rashab's Maamer, Tzim b'mishpat tipoda aderes, which is a part of Hemshech Te'erav, that all three madregas of Oyer are Ayin. The Rebbe is going to take this idea and spin it to serve his perspective. And his perspective we already know. What is his perspective? His perspective is at the lowest level of Eid, it may be the lowest in terms of Ishtalshalos, but it's the most bottle in terms of fulfilling its purpose. And now let's read it inside. At the very end of the Maamer the Rebbe Rashab, literally the last 10 or 12 lines before the Siyam Madrosh, the bottom of page Tov Kuf Ayin, which is Perek Reish Pei Beis, he says, the basis for the nature of Eir to go back to its source and be bottled, is because it's representing the source. So there's two concepts here. Okay, the second concept is Dveikus. Dveikus is actually the lowest level of Eir. Dveikus means how Eir has no metzias other than it reflects its source. Now, above Dveikus is the idea that Eir reitze likol b'mkeirei. So all three levels of Eir have their bittul. Their bittul begins with Dveikus, with their tendency to represent the Eibush and not themselves. Lachein, therefore, haratzoi the Eir, the idea that light wants to go back to the source. V'chein ha-bittul shemitzad haratzoi, that because of a desire to go back to the source, the Eir has a bittul to the Eibushter, who b'chol darges, the Eir exists in all levels of Eir, gam b'ha'eir am alubish b'kelim, even the lowest level of Eir. And the lowest level of Eir is Gilui. The lowest level of Eir is Eidam Eslavish B'Kelim. The lowest level of Eir is expressed because it's not feeling its source. But the lowest level, like the middle level, and like the highest level, all based on Dveikus. And because they're all based on Dveikus, they all have a sense of this Ratzoi and this Bittul that the higher madregas of Eir have. In other words, since Eir is Dveikus, even the level of Eir, that's Giloi, also has this idea of Bittul. Shaharei, Zeh Sha'eiru Davak B'Makar, the notion that Eir represents Hashem rather than itself, is B'chol HaDarga Shabei, is in all levels of Eir. And therefore, since all Dargas of Eir are Dveikus, all levels of Eir have Bittul. Eir is only. She'ikir Haratzu V'Bittul Shemitzad Haratzu, the place where you see this tendency to become attached to the source and become attached to the source in such a way that it's not revealed is be'etzem ha'eir, is in the level of eir which is called etzem, the highest madrege, shalamayla megeder is lapsus b'kelim, which is higher than the light which goes into the vessel, which is the lowest level, and even higher than the light, which has the possibility to go into the vessel, which is called Geder Sapsis B'Kelim, which is the middle level. So the Rebbe says there's higher bittul in Eid and there's lower bittul in Eid. The higher bittul in Eid is that I'm one with the source. The lower bittul in Eid is that I'm Gili. The beginning of all of these bittles is Dveikus, which is in the lowest level also. Since the beginning of all of these bittul is in Dveikus, so you have to say, just like the highest level is Batel, because it has Dveikus, the lowest level that has Dveikus also has the higher bittles. And now comes the Rebbe's idea, V'ya Shleimer. The B'teva ha'oir, haratzu shebe'eh l'kol b'mekeri. The idea that light wants to be one with its source. Shnei inyonim. There's two ideas. There's the idea which is understood when you learn the Maamer of the Rebbe Rashab and this Maamer basically, and there is the idea that you understand when you pay close attention to how the Rebbe is enhancing what the Rebbe Rashab is saying. Number one, haratzon li yes kolul b'mekeder. Light wants to be included in the source, and I'm going to add one more word because the light is better off when it's included in the source. And number two, and the will of light not to be separated from the source. And here I'm going to sort of put words into the Maamer, which are not written here, that the meaning of this statement, means the light doesn't want to be outside of the source. In other words, the light does not want to be outside of what the source wants of it. So I'm reading it this way. The last line of page 7. Haratzon is kol b'mekeri means the light has a desire to be included with the source. It's the closest to the Eibishter. And haratzon le'lias chutz l'mekeri means the light doesn't want to be separate from the source. It doesn't only mean it doesn't want to be separate from the source. It doesn't want to be separate from what the source wants from it, which includes even if the source wants it to be separate. V'zeh she'ikar haratzu hu be'etzem ha'er. The idea that the highest level of light is the level of light which is Ratzu, which is so one with Hashem that it has no gili whatsoever. Hu ba'er. I have to say that again. The idea that the highest level of Eid has to be qualified. Here's how. The lowest level of Eid which is revealed in Kalim. Is the middle level of Eid which is not revealed in Kalim but could be revealed in Kalim. Hu haratzen le'liyas chutzum kere is primarily a desire not to be separate from its source, or as I am enhancing it, not to be separated from what the source wants from it. Ube'etzem ha'ir, the highest madrega of Eid, it's not so much a desire not to be separate from its source, as much as it is haratzon liyas kol b'mekeri. It wants to be one with its source, because then it's closest to its source. And these are Ois Yisarah. This is the Rebbe's language, the Rebbe's sprach. The Shnei Ritzeines Hanal, if you say about two Yidden, one Yid wants to be connected to the Eibishter, and another Yid doesn't want to become separate from the Eibishter. What sounds more wholesome? A Yid who wants to be connected to the Eibishter, or a Yid who doesn't want to become separate from the Eibishter? Obviously, you would say that it's more wholesome to want to be connected to the Eibishter than not want to be cut off from the Eibishter. But there's another way to look at it, don't you think? When a person wants to be connected to the Eibishter, you can't get away from the fact that this is their want. When a person doesn't want to be separated from the Eibishter, this is not because of a desire they have, but because of an impossibility. I can't be separated from him. So even though haratzon leili is lechutz is more superficial, and haratzon li is kolul is more wholesome, there is something about haratzon leili is chutz which is greater than haratzon li is kolul, because when you want one with the Eibishter, the key in that sentence is you. When you don't want to become separated from the Eibishter, the key to that sentence is Eibishter. So the Rebbe therefore says, haratzon li is kolul b'mekeri, the desire of Eid to be included in the source, hu nai liyes, it's a higher level. Why is it a higher level? The fact that Eid has the want to be included in the source, it feels its source, the place of the source is most revealed, is be'ikib Eid is the highest level of Eid, which is, as the Rebbe said in the Maamer, on the other hand, Chutz l'makere, the want that the Madrega of Ein Sof has to not be separate from the Eibishter, says the Rebbe, hu pnimi yes yeser. And the Rebbe says in Yiddish, tifer b'ha'ir. The level of bittul, where I don't want to be separate from the Eibishter, is a lower level than the level of bittul I want to be connected to the Eibishter. But the level of bittul that I won't be separate from the Eibishter goes to my very essence. What does it mean it goes to my very essence? It goes to the place in me that's not thinking about me. It's not even thinking about my relationship with the Eibishter. It's thinking about what the Eibishter wants from me. So you have three levels in Ein Sof. You have a level which is one with the Eibishter, a level which is hidden because of the Eibishter, a level which is revealed. So in terms of what is closer to the Eibishter, obviously the highest level is higher than the second level and the third level. But in terms of the nature of its relationship with the Eibishter, it's the other way around. The Madrega of Eid, which is Gilui, which is being nimshech into a keli, is driven by Haratz and Leili is Chutz. What does that mean? It's not what I want in my relationship with the Eibishter, it's what the Eibishter wants in my relationship with the Eibishter. I don't want to be separate from the Eibishter means I don't want to be separate from what the Eibishter wants from me, even if what he wants from me is to be Gilui. The lowest level of Oir, which is Gilui, and is Dveikus, and it's not Batal to the Eibishter. The only experience that it has is Leili is Chutz Liyetzem, because that's what Oir is. Oir is, I don't want to be separate, not from Hashem. I don't want to be separated from what Hashem wants from me, and that's my Yetzem. Which is why it's in all levels. So there's basically two ideas: the higher level of Eid and the lower level of Eid. The higher level of Eid is closer to the Eibishter, and the lower level of Eid, which includes the second and the third level, is farther from the Eibishter. And the Rebbe says the higher level of Eid is motivated by desire to be one with the Eibishter. The lower level of Eid is motivated by a fear of becoming separated from the Eibishter. And the Rebbe argues this fear of becoming separated from the Eibishter is lower in terms of how close to the Eibishter you feel. But it's deeper in terms of how involved with the Eibishter you are. Because there's no I, it's only Eibishter. And when you talk about Eid B'chlal, there's no I. But there's still a difference between what Eid is mitzad atzmei and what Eid is like being mashal the Eibishter's kavana. And the Eid in terms of mashal the Eibishter's kavana is more in Giloi than it is in Etzem. And the example to illustrate this is the difference between Haratzon dan Neshama L'Kol Beit Itself, and Neshama wants to be one with the Eibishter, V'keach HaMesiras Nefesh, and the Neshama's willingness to give away its life for Hashem. Now let me ask you a question. What's a higher idea, that a Neshama wants to be one with the Eibishter, or the Neshama is prepared to die for the Eibishter? Yeah? You have in Tzemach Vav, in the story of Ratzon and Tainug, the question of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was Mesa Nefesh, but the Mesiras Nefesh was based on Mosa Yodel, the other Vakiyai Meno, and therefore there's an argument that Rabbi Akiva's Mesiras Nefesh is not coming from Ratzon, it's coming from Tainug. It's considered a low Madrega. You hear two Jews. One wants one with the Eibishter, and one is sacrificing himself for the Eibishter. Obviously, the person who wants one with the Eibishter is so much more involved with the Eibishter than the person who's Mesa Nefesh. Why? Mesiras Nefesh will be Kal Shabakalam also. But there's another aspect. The Mesa Nefesh is not thinking about himself. He's thinking only about the Eibishter. And in as much as thinking about himself, the Mesa Nefesh is closer to the Eibishter than the one who has the Ratzon Likol. And therefore, says the Rebbe, Sha'aratzon Likol Beirin Seifu Begili Rak B'Chides Gola. The idea of being intimate with God is for individuals, for rare people. Most Jews don't experience that level. Why? It's a very high level of the Neshama, but it doesn't have the etzem, it doesn't have the desperation of fulfilling its purpose. V'inyan HaMesiras Nefesh, the preparedness to sacrifice one's life, to not become separate from the Eibishter, who begili b'kol echad ve'echad is revealed in each person, is because even though it's lower, it's deeper. Why is it that every Jew is ready to be Mesa Nefesh, not to become cut off from the Eibishter? And so few Jews care to become attached to the Eibishter? And the answer is because the desire to become attached to the Eibishter has to do with your Metzias, and your Metzias could be other things also. The fear of becoming separate from the Eibishter is not connected to your Metzias, it's connected to your Etzem. It's connected to that place in you where you and the Eibishter's purpose are one and the same. And therefore by every Yid it's the same. So we just read two shtikalach, and I hope I made myself clear. I tried. In both of these pieces, we're reading a Maamer from the Rebbe, based on the Maamer of the Rebbe Rasha, but the end is exactly the opposite of the Kavan of the Rebbe Nishmas Hayid. Because the Rebbe, by comparing oir to keli, is saying that the more oir is bottled, the higher it is, and the more oir is mitzias, the lower it is. And the Rebbe says, when you compare oir to keli, that may be true. The Rebbe doesn't even say this. But when you compare it to oir, it comes the other way. Oir is gilui. Why? Gilui is lower. Because that's why the Eibishter created oir. And therefore the madrega of oir, which is gilui, is closer, is tifer, to the etzem of what it is, to serve the Eibishter, which is leilius chutz, leilius nifrit. Higher is one who is very close to the Eibishter, close to the Eibishter to the point you lose it at home mitzias. It's kalalus, eira kol v'moed, etzem. But it's not deeper. Because when one is close to the Eibishter, and experiences that closeness on a very profound and a very high level, there's an element of self, which is not true when one is serving the Eibishter's purpose. So what did we do tonight? What did we do in today's shiur? I mean, some would say we learned nothing. I introduced the Maamer, and I hope I correctly presented how this Maamer of the Rebbe, which is based on a Maamer of the Rebbe Rashab, is 180 degrees opposite in terms of its ultimate outcome than the Maamer on which it is based, which is the Maamer of the Rebbe Rashab, which is the Maamer of the Rebbe Nishmas Hayed. Because in this Maamer we focus not on oir in terms of its heder ametzias, but we focus on oir in terms of how it serves Hashem, and in terms of how oir serves Hashem, gilui is the greatest inyan, and shaleli is chutz, shaleli is nifred, is deeper meharatzon likolol. And in Mitzvah Hashem, in the next Maamer, we're going to start near the beginning of Pei Gimel. I'm not sure how much we're going to cover exactly, but we're going to have the very scholarly discussion on the three madregas of Ein Sof, and that class will be quite similar to a Maamer of the Rebbe Rashab. The next time we're going to be contrasting the Maamer of the Rebbe from the Rebbe Rashab is going to be either in our third or fourth and possibly even our fifth class on this Maamer.